Well, good evening, soul butterflies. I trust you're having a great, wonderful evening. You are listening to Soma Fusion Radio with your host, Katie Kamara, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We are broadcasting to you live worldwide this fine evening on Facebook, somafusion.com, YouTube, and the official Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com website, and soon to be on iHeart. For those who do not know who I am or what I do outside this radio show, to which many have referred to me as their guardian angel and inspiration for their dreams, I am an international author, life coach practitioner specializing in interpersonal relationships, executive coaching, and multidisciplinary in psychology and alternative therapies. I'm also the founder of Soma Fusion, Mind, Body, and Soul, and the Soma Fusion Academy. There's much to discuss on Soma Fusion Radio tonight. I hope you have your pens and paper handy, and if you do not, just listen to it because you can catch the archive of the show later. The official advertisers of Soma Fusion Radio is Conscious Apparel, and Conscious Apparel Co. has stepped in the forefront of expanding consciousness through fashion. Whether it's mantra tees, platonic solid hoodies, or conscious baby onesies, Conscious Apparel Co. prides itself in providing aesthetic apparel that performs the role of elevating conscious and spreading love. And you can find those guys at consciousapparelco.com. And I have a promo code for you, and that's we are one, or one word, for 20% off of all their apparel. Santosha Co. is a new fresh skincare company that specializes in natural and organic skincare products. The majority of the ingredients that go into their products are hand-picked from their farm in northern Wisconsin. You can find those guys at santosha.co. You can go to their website for 10% off of their beautiful natural skincare products, and I might admit that I use those products myself. FNX Fitness, they're located in North Salt Lake, Utah. They're committed to creating innovative supplements of the highest quality that provide focus for a productive morning, energy to thrive all day, performance supplements to reach new goals, and unique sleep and recovery formulas to support any sport, and healthy supplements to support an active lifestyle for years to come. You can find those guys at fnxfit.com. Their promo code is COLLAB, COLLAB, for 25% off of all of their FNX Fit products. If you support me and my work, you can make a donation via PayPal at soma-fusion.com or at Patreon with patreon.com/somafusion. Shout out to my dear friends at PSN Radio Network, Andrew Espino from Miami, Florida, World Pirate Radio Network, Jaffe Ryder, Seoul, South Korea, and Vincent Eastwood, host of the Vinnie Eastwood Show, New Zealand's #1 talk radio show, and SoFlo Radio, and that was previously owned by the late George Rodriguez, who passed this month on the 3rd of July. God bless his soul. Rest in peace. He was the #1 online radio network in South Florida. I encourage you to come and join my challenges, enrich your mind, and grow together with the full support of other members of the Soma Fusion Academy by actively engaging with myself and others. And be reminded that you're not alone in your journey of personal development and enrichment of your lives. We are currently holding, as usual, I will mention on every show, 3 challenges that are scheduled ongoing throughout the year. Full 12-week intensive courses to come, and the challenges that we have right now are 21-day mindfulness challenge, 30 challenges in 30 days, intimacy challenge as well. That's a lot of fun for those couples out there that wanting to add spice to their life. Go to the soma-fusion.com website, where you have full access to daily updates of courses, exclusive daily challenges, exclusive weekly motivational messages, academy resources, Soma Fusion community forum, and additional coaching and therapy services provided by me. For more information on Soma Fusion Academy, again, go to soma-fusion.com and download the app. Or you can email me with your queries at somafusionacademy@gmail.com. I would also like to mention that I've officially gone back to school for the enhancement of my own education to do a double PhD in metaphysics and integrative medicine, alternative, obviously. Starting next month in August, I will be co-lecturing whilst doing hands-on training. So you'll find a hell of a lot more out about what I do as we go on. Also, I am the co-host of another radio show, Goddesses and Devils, with myself and Amanda McManus. We'll be speaking on various topics that are very taboo in nature, from life, relationships, spirituality, empowerment, and everything taboo, inclusive of sex. So don't miss that show. It starts at 7 p.m. every Saturday, Eastern Standard Time. And for those new listeners who have never listened to Soma Fusion Radio, it comes as no surprise that I am a radio show host who likes to raise awareness to educate and empower others to reach their individual potential, mind, body, and soul. I also have my own personal studies which I explore, and that goes from religion to occult studies, ancient history, civilizations, philosophy, hidden secrets, cosmology, semiology, linguistics, anthropology, and all things, of course, psychology. But one thing I love to delve into is hard topics, especially those that are extremely taboo and critically controversial or extremely academic. To those who are involved in their own beliefs, I explore them with critical open thinking and express them without judgment and social inclusion of all. One thing I'll never do on my show is express for you to exclusively jump onto my boat of values, beliefs, or ideologies, but share them with you as a process of diverse learning as a unified, harmonious community. With that said, I encourage each and every one of you listeners out there who are listening in to call in and join our conversation. And please be reminded of this. You do not have to believe anything I say on this show. And most important thing for you to do is to research and learn for yourself with an open, curious mind. Tonight we will talk about spiritual evolution with Frederick Jensen. And I will have the call-in number prompt up on the screen in very, very soon when the guest comes on. But did you ever think, how does one measure spiritual evolution? If someone asked you how spiritually evolved you are, what would your answer be? And how do you justify your answer? Tough questions, hardly any doubt. More than that, these are very subtle and very much subject to an individual's interpretation of his or her goal in life, and also interests and passions. Those who think they are spiritually evolved and mature can very easily fall into the trap of confusing spiritual evolution with intellectual evolution. The latter is straightforward. Human civilization has made amazing advances in every area. Especially in the last 100 years, our lives and living standards have been transformed compared to our ancestors. And it feels like technology modernization is running away from us so fast that we cannot even catch up. In many ways, the collective worldview is also a lot more mature. For the most part, many people agree on many fundamental tenets without any dispute or disagreements. For instance, racism is not a good thing, nor is sexual harassment. Peace and negotiations are always better than any kind of war. Basic human rights and freedom of speech should not be denied to anyone. A few centuries ago, or even decades ago, all of these weren't a given, and we were still trying to find a mature and acceptable view of these topics. But could one say we have spiritually evolved and are much better off than we were decades or centuries ago? Unfortunately, the answer is no, in my opinion. In fact, the bad news is that we may even be worse off than we were decades or centuries ago. But why is it so? But first, we need to understand the meaning of spirituality and being spiritual. In very simple terms, it is easy and it is finding and experiencing the innermost being at the core of our existence. This is not some just face-based paradigm. It is very real, and it has to be assumed that as a hypothesis, we have to then experiment in finding it and experiencing it through techniques like meditation. This is at one core that a lot of people offer. But do we need to know a lot of knowledge and superior intellect to achieve this? Does anyone need a kind of qualification or criteria for this? No, you don't. It works universally for anyone of any age or background. But why doesn't everyone then access and experience their spirituality easily? And why doesn't the world get enlightened quickly? All types of evolution have their own pace and path. No type of evolution is easy, and it requires hard work, maturity, persistence, and almost always is like a pyramid-like process. It becomes harder to reach the apex or the top of the pyramid. It's the test of nature, climbing to the very top of a mountain that isn't for everyone. They need a motivation and the inner urge and desire. And coming back to our topic on evolution, spiritual evolution, it is a very subtle personality improvement paradigm driven by a powerful inner urge we call seeking. It requires experimentation with self and a lot of introspection. And sometimes the knowledge that we accumulate all our lives can complicate this journey of spiritual evolution. We may tend to develop fixations or an undue attachment to logic, science, or process, and spirituality may seemingly evade or not follow any of these. This may throw us off and make us uncomfortable because we enter uncharted territory, encountering experiences and concepts that we have not been taught before. And experience is really the key here. Spirituality is more than experiential paradigm than a knowledge-based paradigm. No amount of reading and learning can substitute actually researching that of a higher state of consciousness and experiencing what it feels like. In the same way, no amount of knowledge about self-improvement or good behavior can make us spiritual, nor can a pretense of good character and behavior or forced adoption of particular good traits. We need to feel and exhibit the good character traits innately. It's almost like we intuitively express and exhibit those character and personality traits. Intellectual evolution, however, can help us understand and get excited about personal transformation at best. It cannot really help achieve personal transformation. And intellectual evolution and advancements may not have a net positive impact on society, but spiritual evolution as a civilization most definitely will. People will be more patient, understanding, and a lot more peaceful. When people get smarter and more intelligent, the world does not necessarily get better or more peaceful. We've already seen that, which is why we say that intellectual evolution and advancements have hardly contributed to spiritual advancement or, improvement. More likely, they have probably made it more difficult and created a world where it is hard to achieve spiritual progress. But let me tell you about spirituality here in the United States from a historical perspective. While America's very foundation was rooted in the pursuit of religious freedom, we still have struggled across the centuries to understand true meaning of spirituality and to sustain an attitude of tolerance and respect for each individual's right to decide what spirituality means to him or her personally. The struggle began in the mid-1500s when French and Spanish pilgrims in the search of religious freedom established colonies in Florida, but not without some bitter battles. Then in 1620, as the fable story goes, the pilgrims persecuted England came to America aboard the Mayflower seeking religious freedom. Then came the Puritans, and since then millions of people from all over the world have followed, believing that America was a melting pot that welcomed people of all faiths, creeds, and granted each the freedom to practice his or own faith without fear or persecution. And while that welcome, the true religions of freedom has not always been faithfully upheld by our forebears or by, in all fairness, all current US citizens. It is at least the grand ideal that our forefathers had in mind, and the goal that the vast majority of Americans continue to strive for. Freedom of religion is, after all, our birthright, a right that is, as President and father of the U.S. Constitution, James Madison wrote, in its nature an inalienable right. Then, as now, the struggle to define, clarify, and understand spirituality has been first about clarifying the difference between spirituality and religion. First, for centuries, people have contended to conflate the terms spirituality and religion without drawing distinctions between the actual core realities associated with each. You've probably heard someone say spiritual, religious, whatever. But within that province of whatever may lie a world of difference. Historically, the words spirituality and religion have often been used synonymously, conflate to have the same meaning, but they don't, or at least they don't necessarily. One can be religious yet not be spiritual. In other words, connected to the divine energy that created the universe. And one can be spiritual without being religious, devoted to a specific doctrine, set of beliefs or rituals. And over the centuries, Various spiritual messengers or prophets attracted followers, and an entire separate religion were built around their teachings. And these prophets were speaking in different countries, different languages, and at different periods in history. Yet many spoke about the same core truths: the truth of the Spirit within us and the ultimate goal of human life, to achieve enlightenment. But throughout history, humans interpreted the messages of the prophets in idiosyncratic ways and split into various factions based on their interpretations, or in some cases, misinterpretations of those messages. Often these religious leaders were driven by ego, believing that their interpretations could be the right ones, and that their religion was superior to all. What might have begun as a spirit de corps could quickly morph into a sort of polarizing tribalism that only further obscured the truth of spirituality. The spirit and innate subtle energy system are found in human beings, in all human beings, regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic status, age, or gender. The perspective of spirituality has always been that spirituality is the true religion within oneself, and that there cannot be any other true religion. Spirituality is the absolute truth that transcends all religions that exist today in their current form. It is religion neutral, thus today's religions are man-made structures. But most of us have an origin with one religion or another. Growing up in the 20th century US, most people you met were either Christians, Jews, non-religious. Certainly with Christianity, there were and still are many different denominations, including Protestants, Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Catholics, Mormons, various and evangelical movements, and others. Before the colonial period, spiritual history in the US was dominated by Native American spiritual practices. While they're quite diverse, most include the supernatural ideas of the omnipresent, invisible, universal forces, spirits, visions, shamans, ceremonies, or rituals, often communal, and address the three life crises of birth, puberty, and death. Spirituality is not a religion to many Native Americans, who view spirituality as a way of daily life rather than a system of organized religious meetings. Native American spiritual practices are very common beliefs, with some Eastern practices such as the strong reverence for animal life, the environment, and elder leaders. There are still other religions, of course, that don't fit neatly into the old tradition Christian categories. Recent trends include, for some, the largely non-denominational prosperity gospel, or the health and wealth gospel congregations, whose theology is comparatively less rigid and divisive, but it is, the critics claim, at the odds with the traditional biblical theology, that one cannot serve both God and money. Owing in part to many flavors of Christianity that had large followings, the spiritual makeup of Americans ultimately came quite diverse, especially compared to other countries where one religion has dominated for centuries, such as Hinduism in India, Catholicism in Italy and Ireland, or Islam in Iraq and Pakistan. We Americans were socialized to believe that we have freedom of choice in all things, and spirituality is no exception. We have many religions to choose from, and most of us were taught that you're supposed to pick one and stick with it. We are also conditioned to accept that spirituality requires regularly attending church or a synagogue. Then comes along yoga and meditation. Now, certainly some old traditional practices found in Western religions, different forms of prayer or chanting, share common ground with some Eastern spiritual practices. But sitting quietly for its own sake was perhaps a relatively new idea in America. We were inclined to think of meditation as contemplative, meditating on something as a way of working through our thoughts, while in the East, meditation was about letting our thoughts settle down, or in this case, achieving a state of thoughtless awareness. In the East, meditation was viewed as an inner quiet that promotes awareness of the larger reality in which humans exist. People who grew up in Eastern countries viewed meditation as normal spiritual practice. In Eastern forms of yoga, and meditation were beginning to gather steam in the US by the early 1960s, if not in the mainstream. And what was Americans to make of that? After all, we weren't socialized to accept meditation as a common practice, and certainly not accept it as a vehicle to spirituality or a form of spirituality in itself. But did meditation count as a religion? We grew up in churches and temples and synagogues, not ashrams and monasteries. And it was not that none of us hadn't ever been exposed to meditation, though it might have been fair to say that many of us hadn't. As far back as 1893, an Indian Swami named Vivekananda, excuse me on the pronunciation, had famously electrified audiences at the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago. In 1940s, after World War II, some American soldiers stayed in Asia and entered monasteries to absorb the unique Zen way of life. When they returned, they brought the Eastern spiritual practices, primarily Buddhism, and other elements of Eastern culture home with them. Having seen the atrocities of war up close, these soldiers, it's been said before, were fascinated by the dignity of meditation practitioners who seemed impervious to suffering. Influences from India, China, Tibet, and Japan slowly seeped into American literature in the late 1950s, the moment that in the time when the so-called Beat generation was poised to launch the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s. Concentrated forms of meditation such as transcendental meditation were famously popularized in the 1960s by the Beatles and their association with transcendental meditation guru Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and of course the Dalai Lama, who first visited the US in the late 1970s, became a popular figure in mainstream American media, which increased the American interest in Buddhism and Buddhist meditation practices. And then, of course, by the 1970s, American neuroscientists, clinical researchers, and psychologists began to look more closely at the underpinnings of consciousness and the effect of meditation and relaxed therapies on mental health, motivated in part by growing interest in Eastern spiritual practices. Studies begin to spring up, and while many of those were inconclusive or incorrectly conclusive due to a part in lack of awareness of critical differences between meditation techniques, the quest to pinpoint the specific health benefits of meditation had begun. So now, in addition to spiritual interest in meditation, there was a strong secular interest in meditation. Meditation was becoming many things to people. And while this was generally a good thing, it was bound to create some confusion. But there were the foundations of which the spin-off forms of meditation would blossom, such as mindfulness meditation, compassion meditation, loving kindness meditation, which all arose from Buddhist meditative traditions. You're probably also familiar with the term nirvana. Nirvana was the kind of word that seems to be surrounded by an aura. It instantly triggers familiar association with American values such as peace, bliss, harmony, wholesomeness, well-being, and natural goodness. Thus, it has inevitably been put to use in popular vernacular. The concept of nirvana is often commercialized in literature as a symbol of ultimate peace and tranquility in the product brands as a reflection of a longing for something more, targeted to a culture that has what it needs, food on the table, a little money in the bank. It is not a fully satisfied and never ever searching for a transcendence above daily human condition, targeting human aspirations. As a marketing strategy aside, it is natural for humans to seek heaven on earth. Nirvana is widely written about by spiritual truth seekers. Some believe that it's a state of spiritual perfection, one realizes that there's nothing outside of nirvana once you've reached nirvana. It is a permanent, everlasting state. However, some believe that it is achieved through only devotional acts, and that one cannot reach nirvana without completely detaching from the material world. And others believe that nirvana does not really exist until we've all reached it. But what is nirvana? Well, certainly it's more than a grunge rock band, a mattress that promises a blissful idyllic night's sleep. The distilled essence of nirvana is liberation, self-realization, and enlightenment. Nirvana is all about discovering and unleashing the spirit of inner self or inner self. As a subtle inner energy, Kundalini energy, rises, there's a union of the energy between the cosmic being and the all-pervading power. This causes us to realize, perceive our inner self and being in tangible terms through experience of a cool breeze or vibrations that we can actually feel acting on our central nervous system. But nirvana is often said to be liberation from the cycles of birth and death, but this is a slight misinterpretation as well. What liberation means is that once we discover and realize our spirit within, we have the freedom to choose our birth or rebirth, more simply become one with the divine, the all-pervading, omnipresent power. So how much does being on earth or in the heavens, does it matter when we've truly experienced heaven on earth? Not really much. In the state of nirvana, we're able to access higher spiritual state of existence. Even as earthly human beings, we feel liberated because of a cycle of birth and death becomes irrelevant to us. We don't fear anything, including death. We only care about what the subtlest self is. The state is also known as the state of salvation, or moksha in Sanskrit. But many are looking for something more. Turn to spirituality and may seek spiritual truth through meditation. A surprisingly majority of people assume that extensive knowledge about a concept such as nirvana equates to spiritual improvement, but sadly it doesn't. You can be incredibly well-read and knowledgeable about nirvana or any other spiritual topic in that case, or other deep spiritual concepts, but it gets you nowhere until you first experience your own self-realization. Your behavior and character personality must change for the better. Then, and only then, do these concepts have any real meaning in your or relevance in your life. And for thousands of years, the higher pursuits of human beings have been focused on discovering the subtler realms of existence and the infinite power of nature. Seeking the ultimate truth is a quest as old as the revolution of human beings, or the evolution of human beings. We all have within us seeds of seeking that drive us to pursue higher and richer states of existence, a higher consciousness. Enlightenment can be thought of as the pinnacle of this aspiration and journey, the ultimate defining moment of the highest pursuits of human beings. In precise terms, enlightenment means having the light within, and that self is illuminated in the deepest inner subtle self, deeper than the mind, body, intellect, ID, or our ego is the spiritual self, the soul. The discovery of the inner soul and the ability to actually feel it through tangible experiences is the achievement of enlightenment. The effects of understanding the inner self, the radiant out towards the percolate into our daily lives, further establishes the effects of enlightenment during our lifetimes. But enlightenment is not a journey, is a journey, not a final destination. Many people view enlightenment either as a one-time happening or as a magnificent final peak achievement, after which nothing more important else exists. But in reality, enlightenment is a journey, not a final destination. And the initiation or gateway into this journey is self-realization. The ultimate value of enlightenment comes down to what the individual makes of it. Simply attaining enlightenment and doing nothing with it won't get you much. Failing to apply its lessons will do nothing to improve your life. In fairness, sustainable enlightenment isn't easy. Like all major achievements in life, it requires hard work, perseverance, and focus, and even as it's a highly enjoyable experience, there are powerful attractions in this world, most of them material in nature, that tend to attract us more strongly and lead us off the path of our journey. So with that said, let's hit a break, and you are listening to Soma Fusion Radio with your host Katie Kamara on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. For more information, please look me up on social media or go to my website soma-fusion.com or somafusionmedia.com, and don't forget to like, subscribe and share out this show and let the whole world know what we're learning each week. Invite them to listen with us, and when we come back we're going to talk some more about the evolution of spirituality with Frederick Jensen. And we are back. You are listening to Soma Fusion Radio with your host, Katie Kamara, and we are talking all about the evolution of spirituality this evening with my guest, actually, Frederick Jensen. He's also a co-host with Daryl or Odin on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network on Odin's Realm of Investigation. Frederick Jensen, this is a quote from him. It all started in the 1960s with a curious mind and a lump of clay with a metaphor for life building. The clay was me, of course, but the clay was also real. This is where I learned to mold my passion for art, the spiritual, and the writing, and an adventurous sense of business. My mind, the meditator, seeing through dimensional aspects of people and reality through realms of who knows what. Then speaking to express meaning, it was like seeing God, the face of God, or dying any life-altering event, then trying to explain it in words. And it is no wonder why I would pick up the pen and brush, or that it would become a passion of life. A life passion, I should say. I would have many passions by nature, and I am abstract surrealist who leans towards geometrics, line play, and this has inspired me in fiction, fantasy, and non-fiction writing. Art and the art of writing defines us. It expands our knowledge and understanding of ourselves and the world we live in. And for more information on that, I would love to bring on Frederick right now, my good old trusty friend. How are you, Frederick?
I'm here.
Oh, hi. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
I am wonderful. So, what I just read, what's that all about?
Which one?
You.
What you were just talking about me, or
yeah, I was
the
talking
previous?
About you. That was a quote that you said. Talking about yourself. So, who are you? Aha.
A mystery.
A mystery. Do
Everything
tell.
and nothing. Some call me a moody druid.
Okay.
A spiritualist. Buddhist. Mage.
Mm-hmm.
A believer.
Okay.
I'm a practice. Currently being practiced.
Mm-hmm. But what does that mean to you?
We spend our life adopting and adapting to principles and ideologies that people bring up, bring out, walk through, walk on, and present. And none of that means anything unless we take what we have learned and we practice it. And it's only through practicing it that we learn how it fits within the scope of our own nature, the scope of how we fit into everything, and the scope of our relationship with what some call God, some call Great Oversoul Diva, the Great Father, the Great Mother, our hostess, the Earth, all of that. You really cannot claim to have a practice if you don't actually work with it and put it to use.
And you said that you're a druid. So how did you? Is that generational, or is that something that you picked up?
Yes, it was a 5 and Dime magazine, and I walked up and paid a dime, and I got the magazine. Druidism is a Druids were teachers and learners. They belonged to the old religion, Age of Heroes, further back. And it's a calling, it's a choice, it's a presentation, an ordination, if you will, but not in our current terms. The acceptance is by she. The manifesto lay in life, in support of life, in the belief of nurturance and growth, an evolution of the mind, and the practice of reaching up and not reaching down.
And so, how do you relate what you do with the what is your views on the evolution of spirituality with everything that you practice and that you've learned in your journey?
I'm probably going to disappoint you.
Oh.
I believe less that spirituality evolves and more that people evolve to fit the niche that they're moving into their ideology of spirituality. If you sit before a ball of energy, that ball of energy is there. Our interpretation is that it's a ball of energy. The ball of energy's interpretation may be something entirely different. We tend to treat spirituality like cards or dominoes or something to acquire, but it's not the spirituality that we're acquiring. That's always there. That's like having a mother. Regardless of what you do, that individual that gave birth for you is the person that gave birth for you. It's there physically, mentally, emotionally. Not always, but that doesn't change the concept of the being that gave birth to you. We then take and we identify what we believe is good in a mother, what we believe are qualities that we think should exist inside of that individual. And having done that, we ascertain to fill those holes up, to fill those areas, to make them make sense. Religion, dogma, men. Spirituality, dictate the divine. If you sit before the celestial palace and that divine presence is there, I suppose you could say that it evolves spiritually. However, are we not more speaking of a relationship with ourselves and what we believe to be a deific force?
But where do we go with
In
that?
practice.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry,
Keep
go
going.
ahead.
Continue on.
No, I was going to say, in practice of old, I've taught ritual practice, meditation. I've done past life regression work, channeling. Those were all early on things. But those are just things. They're edifices to get their tools, to get from one place to another, like meditation. And you're in the process of meditating and you have to take time to think about something, then you're really not quite there. It's not a fight, it's a prayer. There's an old preacher, Pentecostal preacher, that used to say, praying is the most sincere form of meditating. Because praying isn't about asking for the giblet tray. Praying is about touching the divine. Reversing that, meditating is the most sincere form of prayer. You're opening up to beyond your usual self. You're opening up to touching that nature of the divine. Are there side effects of it? Absolutely. Very pleasant side effects of it.
So what is the
However,
okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say you mentioned about praying. Now, is there a difference between actually praying to the divine, or is there a difference between opening up the channels and chanting, which is what we see in religion?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
Is there a difference between actually meditating and praying to the divine and actually chanting through rituals, i.e., what we would do when we read out the Bible, perhaps?
Oh, okay. I actually like that. That's pretty good because in the action of praying, where you're looking at meditating, you're not actually looking at the idea of asking for anything. You're looking at the idea of touching, of making contact with that individual. It's in Tibetan Tantrism, you have this portion where you're seated before your partner and you're staring into their eyes. And you breathe and you move the energy centers. You can feel that happening. But what you end up doing eventually is losing track of the fact that that's what you're doing with that. And all you do is you feel the presence of the person that's in front of you. You merge with that presence. Could be a sexual experience, could be a non-sexual experience. Either way, you have a merging of that between those two individuals. It's no less with what you would call God. You go back to the New Testament, or you go back to Jesus, where he's talking about going down into the Garden of Gethsemane to sit in quiet and become one with the Father. That's meditating. And he spent a great deal of time. He went by himself. Why? Because disciples talk too much. But what he taught them to do was learn how to do what? Quiet the chatter and sit in silence. It's difficult to hear anything if you're constantly talking or your mind is constantly working. So, on the idea of chanting, though, the purpose is different. If you go to Catholicism, you have the idea of litanies, right? Mother Mary, various prayers they use, and there's meaning behind it. You have the Gaia mantra, which is the light, sound, sight, manifestation, realization, it engages. On the other hand, the other version is a self-effulgent light that has given birth to all the lokas, spheres of consciousness, who is worthy of worship and appears through the orbit of the sun, illumine our intellect. That's not a bad one. Most chants and mantras, they have a meaning. They have a purpose. Focuses your consciousness on a particular goal. It's like the perfect group ritual if you can get everybody to cooperate and function as one instead of the individual needs. There's a lot of different mantra or chants. You have your Catholic Church, you have the Gregorian chants, obviously you have the Buddhist chants, you have the Native American songs, chants, prayers, and in that there are a lot of similarities to it. You're creating a repeating energy, creating a larger charge and sending it out into the universe or to a deific force to receive an answer or an energy. That can be healing. It can be an increase in fortune. It can be to avert a plague. Biblically, we've talked about it before, when two or more gather in my name, there I am. That energy and stronger, that energy is more powerful. It's a concentration now of energy and increasing the battery size.
For those who don't understand, the whole I get it. You pray, but you don't see the signs. How do you go about people like that, who pray and pray and pray, and they hope to see somebody or touch the divine or touch God or see God?
You see, and that's what's funny about all of us, is that we see God every day. We see God all around us, just like we see beauty all around us, but we don't pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. We become accustomed to ignoring things. But how about this? We have this thing that's going on around us in the world now, and so we had this quiet time. We'll call it a timeout. And when we got done with the timeout and we went back outside, people could see the mountains. They could breathe the air. Plants looked better. They were healthier. That's a sign. I guess it depends on what kind of sign it is that you look for.
Majority.
There's goodness everywhere. If you look for bad, that's what you're going to find.
And that's exactly what there's a lot of people out there that don't see beyond what needs to be seen or what could be seen, and going beyond the sun, going beyond the hillside, going beyond what is perceived to be logically the answer. The majority of people don't know how to. They don't know how to because of whatever their upbringing, their environment, their spiritual sense, call it what you will, what they've been taught.
I remember when I was growing up, we went through several churches. And one of my favorite ones was a Pentecostal church. Mm-hmm. And they believe in the saying of tongues. right? Receiving a message from God, and then somebody else interprets it. And to me, that's channeling, except for the same person is making the interpretation that they are when they're receiving. And if you go through different areas, through what you would call different religions, they're really the same manifestation. However, it kind of goes like this. You can take a course in college, maybe math, and you can have a half a dozen professors that you go to explain what's going on. And then you get one professor and it just clicks. There's symmetry there. It's like you've been through 1,000 lives with that individual, and they say it one time, and all of a sudden it just makes sense. And the storehouse of religions tends to be that way. We have maps and guidelines and roads to walk on. And although in the Western Hemisphere, man has done everything that it can to rip the Bible or to remove the actual functional pieces of practice from that, they still exist. They exist in the Essenes paperwork. They exist in the Nag Hammadi. They still exist in the Bible, in the New Testament, even though they tried to take those things out. You have parables, metaphors, and within that association is the statement of, seek and you'll find, knock and the door will be opened. The kingdom of heaven is within, which tends to lead one to believe that the idea of going to a church, a building, it's not the thing that has to happen. You have aesthetics that live in caves, they live in small rooms. Their communication is directly with nature, it's directly with what they believe to be God. The communication between the two is very clear to them. You have edifices built as portals of power, not portals of power with the assumption that that power means that we're going to dominate everybody, but portals of power with the idea of a talisman. People congregate there. If things go correctly, people get happy there. They have weddings there. They find joy there. They sing songs there. They're uplifted there. The intention of a congregation, of a group affair. Take that and change that just a tiny bit and go to a spot where people do ceremony quite often. Whatever the reason for the ceremony is, you feel that from that area. Walk up on it. It's special. You can feel it, whether the people are there doing it or not. If you go to a place where people are exhibiting anger and derisiveness, that's what you feel. Trepidation before you even go in there. You can walk into somebody's office and feel that there's tension in the air from the bickering going on with the people. a gift given to you or implanted in you, in your DNA, well, you can just call it proprioception, is that ability to feel those things, to meet those things out. But we don't pay attention to those things because we don't think that they have a value. Yet everything has a value. If you ignore the simple things that you can do, then you keep yourself from doing the larger things that you can do. Because one thing builds up on another. A prayer, be it a meditation or a chant, resonates out across the land, through the land, into the universe, greets and meets other energies of a like force, and creates a resonance. If you sit and you chant with somebody, the vibrations of the chant will change the atmosphere around you. Call it a gift, call it just simple physics, like a tuning fork. We've shown through science, since that seems to be what most people are fascinated with now, that if you go to an accelerator and you're focusing on one atom here, another atom of similar nature farther down is affected by it and reacts in a similar way. Thoughts have power, vibrations flow everywhere. And if you take your chant, your prayer, and it stays in focus with what you're working at creating, then you're building a force. Whether you believe it to be a living force or not doesn't make any difference, because the more you add to it, the more it has strength to perpetuate itself. Thought forms.
Mm-hmm. Which brings me to another point about spiritual bypassing. Using spirituality as a means of escapism, and in order to avoid dealing with issues, unresolved wounds. So as much as we sit there and contemplate or meditate to gain clarity, sometimes we are avoiding what needs to really be dealt with. And I think that, in today's society, there's a lot of us that are going down that, because even though we are all taking a breath and taking a moment, taking a temporary vacation, we're still avoiding some of the biggest issues that humans experience in their lives, and use it as an escape, as a form of escapism, to not deal with the things that truly matter.
Okay. I understand where you're coming from on that, I think. And we're talking about human nature
Mm-hmm.
and human development. And what does it take for you or I to take the steps necessary to clear the path in front of us to walk with a clear conscience or walk with a clear mind, or stay focused on the things that we believe that matter to us or to everybody, that people should be focused on. And that's a very difficult one, because then I'm telling you what you should be focused on. And as a parent, we tend to know that the more we push in that direction, the less it works.
Mm-hmm.
However, that has less to do with spirituality than it has to do with I can't venture into that to say what exactly it has to do with, because it's a by the place, by the case. Person goes up into the mountains, becomes an aesthetic. They tell you, are they running away? Absolutely. Are they doing something better than what they were doing before? Only they know that. We have people that have worked in held high-level positions in corporations quit, homeless, rather than be part of what is continuing to damage humanity. In the terms of enlightenment, then which one is more enlightened at that time? The one who continues to do what causes them to get ulcers, or the one that decides, maybe this isn't as important as I thought it was. Maybe the mark that we have set for humanity and society, owing to the fact that you can go 20 miles and people feel entirely different about it, definitely differs from country to country. What is really important? Both people at work, one person at work. Then who takes care of the children? And when I say takes care of the children, I mean who sets the example for the children? Who gives the nurturance for the children? Because the politicians aren't going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
How do we create a better society, or how do we make anything great again if we take away the foundation of what makes such a thing great? It's not money that makes anything great. Money is great because you can do things with it, but we come back down to that eternal thing. How much has been done in the name of money that cannot be undone? Or, well, it can't be undone. It can change. Certainly in the future, it can change. We can do something better. We can do something different. Putting your head in the sand? Probably not the best idea. However, if you're going to truly become an aesthetic, you have to start someplace. If you're doing it to run away from your issues, that's an entirely different thing. I had a psychopharmacology teacher, and he used to say this: at some point, you have to grow up. And part of that is understanding that if all you're focused on is your problems, if all you're focused on is all the negative crap that's going on in the world, what do you think you're going to have? That's all the feeling that you're going to have. You're going to reproduce it. You're going to reproduce it. You're going to reproduce it. Because What you have at the tip of your tongue, what you have at the top of your list of things to think about every day, is what you're going to replicate. Subconsciously, consciously, it will just create ways of happening. You take a chant, you take a mantra, you take a prayer, you take a meditation, and you find opportunities to create change, to make a change in neuroplasticity, change your mind, change your body, change your existence. Is it that simple? For those who believe, yes. Is it difficult? For those who believe that, yes. We live in a world that's been that produces based on where you keep pushing it, based on where you keep putting your energy. You have had some fantastic things happen to you based on that idea of you continue to look for good, you find good. If you continue to swing a sword at people, eventually you either win or you catch a sword. We can make that change. Can we do it following the same old rules? The ones that got us to where we are now? Probably not. It's like the it's like the person who, and I know it's a touchy subject, but it's like the person who has cancer. And he works with the doctor, and the doctor says, okay, you're in remission. You're good. Let's keep you healthy. And the person says, fantastic. I can go back to what I was doing before I got sick. Where's the flaw? What was happening before the person got sick that caused such a vibrational change that they got sick? If we want to see change, we have to take active participation in what we're doing. But it can't be active participation based on repetitive negativisms. And going back to religions, there's an old saying that throws all the religions that you see into one pile. There is not a worthless or a useless religion. There are people that misinterpret. There are people that follow things that were written by people. The things that we see, that we hear, that we touch here, were written down by people. They've been reinterpreted by people so that people understand it easier. There's bound to be flaw in that. Which is why following that one statement, the kingdom of heaven is within. Mm-hmm. The discernment is through the prudence of practice and discovery. Seeking, you will find. You have to look. You can't just look. You have to act. You have to practice. It has to be a living practice. There's always going to be dogma because everybody has an interpretation. The idea, though, is for you to be the PhD. Do the work, provide a unique contribution to your field. And in this, do the work, do the practice, provide a unique contribution to your life. And that doesn't mean always that it's going to come within the next 2 seconds. I mean, it could.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit that some of the best experiences in my life have come out of study, practice, walking through a field of hornets and coming out and going, oh yeah, I made it through that. Because we're not just an example to ourselves, we're an example to other people.
Exactly.
What we consider failure might be the universe's way of showing other people that, hey, you can actually do this. And it doesn't mean that we don't walk through fire. It doesn't mean that we don't get our knuckles bloody while we're doing the work. It doesn't mean that there aren't all sorts of things that happen. We're all at different stages of personal development. However, if you choose to take an assignment where you're fighting the good fight comes with some, it comes with some times that aren't always pleasant. But you get through. And you look back and you go, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And there's lessons in that too. What more of a lesson is there than making it out the other end of something and people going, what something did you make it out of? Because inside of that, you're able to share with other people. You're able to find that ray of sunshine. You're able to meet and greet, hold a vibration, hold a thought, hold a heart. Find the fun, find the love, find the joy, find the beauty. Be those exact things. And as you transform that, will you feel good all the time? I would hope so. However, we're on this planet. Will you enjoy yourself? I think so. Tantric Tibetan Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
you create your joy. That's your responsibility. My joy is not your responsibility. We can work together, but in that developmental joy for myself, that's my responsibility. You could be in a pile of diamonds, and if you don't like diamonds, it won't make a damn bit of good, will it? However, you can change how you look at it and put a light on those things, and they'll be sparklies everywhere. Then you'll have a giant disco ball. But in large, where we go in life and how we attend to it and what there is that we get out of it is based on what we choose for perception. Some people see a penny on the street and they go, oh, that's just a penny. Some people pick up a penny on the street and they go, oh, hey, that's one of those World War II misprints. That's worth $100,000. What's the difference? Perception.
Mm-hmm.
You pointed something out in your introduction. This world is not for the faint of heart right now. Whether you say that it's evolving with its people at an accelerated rate, however it is that you choose to define that, it takes work, stick-to-itiveness. And it's a really good time to be around people that support change, that support the idea, and not just the idea, but the practice of creating space for joy and love and laughter and well-being amongst people. I still believe in Santa Claus, so you can say, shut up, Pollyanna, at any time. But, you know, and that's, but that's the thing. We have energy tools, polarity therapy, we have Reiki, just there are innumerable different types of energy well-being, alternative transformation, healing methods, and this is it's kind of an odd country in that sense. We're a great hodgepodge, melting pot, smelting pot. We're going to work out the impurities because that's what this does. You've got to dig deep here. And we have room for all sorts of practices, but you have to be prepared to make a stand with those practices also at the same time. We go back to Clinton. We have the idea that, oh yeah, we're going to look into herbology. We're going to make it so that insurance works with acupuncture. And we do now, but not nearly as much as we could. We still try to base a principle of something that's existed for thousands of years on having to find a science for it. And that's where that thing comes in where you have to believe in something. You can't find something that's sitting right in front of you. If your glasses are already on your eyes, the problem isn't that you can't find it. The problem is that you've lost track of yourself. Your awareness is someplace that you need to catch yourself. We develop. And there are multimodal ways of developing. And it's not a race. People want instant gratification. We have Instagram and YouTube and instant messages and instant access to everybody. Instant. Nobody has to learn how to spell anymore. You don't have to memorize a phone number. And your phone will tell you whether you actually said the right word or not, except for it tends not to get the right word.
And everything is explained by emojis.
Well, yes.
And
Yes.
gifs.
And right as I learned that term, my son told me I was using it entirely wrong. Tech can be a great thing. We can access online most of the things that you need to know, with the exception of the generated energy for working with somebody that sets the place and space for raising Kundalini,
Mm-hmm.
for doing a rebirth, for doing past life regression. That's all the rage again.
Why is that? Why do we find it so innately um, pursuing to find out what our to experience a past life regression? Um, is it because we seek closure, or we seek to relive the experiences that we've been through?
I think it's a little different now than it was in the 80s. If you'd have asked me that in the 80s, I would have said that it's probably exactly that. We had a bunch of famous people writing books on channeling, past lives, and other things along that line. And that was great because it opened things up. And then we had the government trying to stomp it out. And that wasn't quite as great. There is now, though, you have the pyramid found in what was it, Russia. You have new excavations going on across the world. They're finding pyramids and evidence of other ancient artifacts or buildings, and the ideas on those things are changing. So archaeology doesn't change, but the idea that, oh, these are the oldest, well, no, not necessarily. And that would mean that those, like ley lines, Stonehenge, that those points of energy are exactly that, points of energy, little power hubs. And I find, and of course, it would be different per person, but for most of the people that I talk to or that I know and that I work with, they're interested in your favorite word, fusion.
Yeah.
Yes. So they're interested in drawing those energies, those lifetimes, into one space. To have an understanding, on one hand, of what they're capable of, to have an understanding of what has brought them to where they are. So yes, in some elements it is healing, to let go of things from the past, to make sense of things that happen in the present. It goes with the idea of karma and growth.
Which is why I was going to say, right now, I mean, we are, after all, every single one of us are spiritual beings who are having a human experience. But what we what we resist will still persist. And we might believe that at our core, we are beings of light and love, and that this is dissolving and the old and ushering in of the new is in line with the evolution of consciousness on this planet currently right now. But to believe that this without being firmly grounded in awareness of the widespread anguish and suffering that is currently going on right now, a lot of us are being insensitive. And of course, millions of our lives will be turned upside down before the COVID-19 virus ceases to be an actual threat. Well, it is a threat already, but the problem is that, people, which we would call, let's say in this context, spiritual seekers, we need to actually balance, and that was the word you just mentioned a good word there, and we actually need to find balance the contradiction of living in fear, anxiety, and suffering, while simultaneously acknowledging that there's a better future being ushered in. And of course, with everything that's going on right now, it invites us to feel finally what fear is really like, both with COVID-19 and the disillusion of the old ways of being, and simultaneously embracing the belief that a new and better world is coming. Doesn't matter in what capacity, that something bigger and better is coming. And with that said, we can accept the duality of fear and hope, and we will be able to stay grounded, which will allow us to respond to what lies before us with love and compassion. And if we aren't already doing that, then we're still lost. We're still trying to find common ground.
I believe that we're always going to be trying to find common ground, though, not trying to find common ground. You have these things they call ascended masters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have Jesus, you have Buddha, you have Gautama Buddha, and we can go, that spreads out very wide. If you go to certain deistic forces, or you go to certain countries, they would tell you that they're not worshiping the actual being that you think they're worshiping. What they're doing is they're taking and they're imbibing the qualities, they're invoking the qualities that being represents. At that point, that's a mantra. And also, though, for everybody else, that would be the same as talking about Jesus, or what everybody talks about God to be, or any other being of deific force that talks about compassion and love and the generation of that and transforming. And so the idea of transformation of this nature has been going on for a very, very long time. And you have two sides of that coin that exist with what you're talking about. One side of that coin is when we talk about existence and being at a point in spiritual reality and growth, we speak of things as if everything is the same age, as if everything has the same development. And in this, we also look at the beginning of this, one of the many beginnings of this particular planet, and that there are things that crawled up out of the sludge. There's an evolution that belongs there, and there's without going up the alien avenue, there are signs that there have been advanced races, advanced knowledge, advanced teachings on this planet several times. And somehow they still manage to destroy each other. Then we must also take a look at the idea that maybe we're not all at the same point in development. Maybe part of the one-trick pony is that it's not just one trick, is that if we are going to take and supply companionship to, using the biblical reference to God, then we evolve as we go along, right? Your children evolve, they become better at communicating. Sometimes it's more fun to talk to somebody else's child, but the idea is that we mature. And maybe not everybody is on the same level. Not everybody is the same age. Not everybody has the same abilities. Are the capability? Is the possibility there? Yes. It still takes the work and the effort. On one hand, you would say those who come into this particular life who are using or seem to be advanced spiritually, who prophesy, or they're good at healing, or they're good at psychometry, or they're good at empathy. They came here with that in function because they earned the right to come here with that in function, and it's something that they've been developing over 1, 2, 3, however many past lives they've had before they actually came here. So the ultimate question for you then would be, if we were to sit down and do a past life regression, would it be a past life regression as in you are just here and we are traveling through time to do that? Would it be a past life regression as in we're here, but also at the same time you are connected to everything that exists at every time. And when you work with a person and you're doing a past life regression, that person is going through all the many selves that they are, since it's all connected together. And does it matter?
Well, that's exactly true. And I mean, we sit here and we think so much on the past that or past and experiences that, you know, I guess it goes back to what I was saying before about seeking closure. Healing by going back to the past and healing the past in order to maybe have a better future, or have grow better than what it was, be better than what it was before, or have a life
or
better
not
than what
be
it was before.
stuck in certain emotional habit patterns.
Exactly.
Based on because you love psychology. If you have an understanding of why you do something, and you have an understanding of where it began, and you can actually take the steps to work with those things, then you can move beyond them. It doesn't mean they go away, but you have a reference point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you hit your toe with a hammer. It wasn't on purpose, but what you learn from that is to move your toe. Right? Okay. So, but let's say it's not you, it's somebody else, and they hit their toe with the hammer, and they're seriously stubborn, and they're going to keep their toe there no matter what, and still hit the object that is right by their toe, maybe eighth of an inch off. You and I would say it would make sense to do that, to move your foot. But that individual, until they can actually see that they're not, where does this come from? They're not going to let go. And it goes back to the statement of, if you live your problems, all you have is problems.
That's exactly. And what you made a good point earlier about people who are negative or be negative. If you swing that sword, keep swinging that sword, it's going to end, well, it's not necessarily going to end bad for you. You're just going to have to suffer the consequences, that good or bad, that follow afterwards.
Absolutely.
Compared to a life that is full of gratitude, love, compassion, kindness. And there's probably many other things that I can possibly think of there, but, we get the point.
I understand that. How about companionship?
There you go.
We undervalue the nurturance that comes from every experience. You grow up, your parents tell you the pan is hot, but the pan is glowing a pretty gold red color. And your parents know that eventually you're going to go over there and do that. So they keep whatever they need necessary nearby, because you're going to do that. And you go over there and you touch the pan and you go, it's hot. And you're burned, so they run your hand under cold water. It used to be ice. And it all gets taken care of. And some people say, well, why did you do that? But that too doesn't make sense, because asking a child why is like, you may as well go get the hammer for your toe. The idea is that we all have to have the experience. Now, not everybody touches that pan. They all touch the pan, though, in a different way. One person swings the hammer. Another person touches the pan. It kind of sets some guidelines for our experiences that say, if we keep doing this, this is what's going to happen. And we can learn to do something different when we understand that we're not swinging the hammer all the time because we're being obstinate, but still we're being obstinate. We're swinging the hammer because Katie told me no. If you touch the pan will hurt you. The pan's not hurting me. The heat is. But that's not even the point. If we don't make anything out of it, when I touch the pan, we fix the hand, we go, okay. So that is exactly what it is. The punishment for touching the pan is what happened to your hand. My daughter used to tell me I would much rather, that I was much better with the really big, harsh, horrible things that happened than I was with the little ones. Mm-hmm. And that I would get that lecturing every time on the little ones. And that I would leave the big ones with a couple of statements in the experience and sitting with yourself. That's like a meditation. And I said, yeah, that's probably true. And she said, why? And I said, because on the big experience, you did something and your realization came really, really quick. Your hand got burned. You know, that's that. So the punishment was immediate. You punished yourself. I don't need to walk on that because you already did. So let it go, because if you keep focusing on that, that's going to be your experience for life. But the small things are like having a wonderful relationship. Wonderful relationships are built out of small things that make larger things. I bring you a flower. You like the flower. It smells good. It's a mutual experience. And the joy, the heart that is shared at that moment, something you can't get rid of. And experiences like that of support and nurturance, they build a stronghold for those times when things aren't quite as great. Because we live on a planet that has varied experiences all over the place. All over the place. And it is those experiences of nurturance and love and training that moves us through. That gives us that one more breath to take one more step to do that courageous act. That courageous act is in us, but motivation is a big deal in that. I saw something the other day where they said this is important to tell the people that you love them, or hug them, or give them a kiss before you leave to go wherever it is that you're going. My statement in that, and it applies to this whole spiritual metaphysical thing, is yes, it does. It resonates. And if something happens, that's what you have to hold on to. That's what you have to work with at that moment. Do you put it out of your head? Nope, because it always sits in the back, working its way forward. And that works also for spirituality. It works for spiritual growth. It works for love. It works for development. What you learn, what generates response and action, what comes out of right action, that stays with you. Those feelings, those moments where you are kneeling or bowing or meditating or doing a standing meditation or hugging a tree or sitting at the edge of the ocean, that stays with you. The practice in being part of that isn't always having to do something, with the exception of doing absolutely nothing and being grateful for it. Being still. Taking a breath with each other. And the energy of that breath, that gratitude, generates a happening. It's a practice. We've gotten out of habit. I mean, if you're going to have a habit, why not let it be love or gratitude? The more gratitude you show, the more groovy good things happen around you. And if you're busy showing gratitude, you don't really have time for all the other BS that's going on out there. And that's not a negativism on being involved in your particular practice of spirituality or any of those things. Because I'll tell you what, if you were to come to me and tell me, I don't practice anything, and you give the best hugs in the world, you practice something.
Certainly did.
Because that's a generation of love. It's a generation of love. Because hugs don't lie. We don't practice to run away. Running away from something to hide is avoiding something, and that's not within the realm of that practice. We practice to be aware, so that when we're not practicing, we can be aware. In life, current or past, awareness was different. We had a country full of people. We have a country full of a lot of people now. But we have a country full of people that had an interest in what was going on because they had a hand in it. We have a country full of people now that, although we have all sorts of resources, have been cut off from everything. We have a country full of people that, yes, they're afraid because in many ways they haven't had to deal with this kind of thing before, but they have. We just haven't had to deal with having to sit in one place. We haven't had to work with having to be comfortable with being in our own presence for more than 2 minutes. Could you imagine now having to go back to a typewriter with no screen? No computers for corrections? Count out change. You know where I go to meditate?
Where's that? In the forest?
The sink. I do dishes.
Oh. Hey, I could have taken a stab in the dark and said the bathroom, but you know.
Yes. Well, you know, I love the forest. I do. And I live in an area where we are privileged to have those things just outside the door, practically. And it's nice, I think, to be able to be grateful for those things. And at the same time, being grateful for friendship and love. In a meditation, to be able to smile and feel that sensation that you feel when you kneel, and it's like a hug from the divine that spreads through you, follows the breath, goes out. We forget that these are things that we can do anytime, anywhere. We don't have to go to some place special. However, it is nice to be able to go to some place special. Even nicer to be able to say, hey, sit with me. Hey, kneel with me. Hey, take a moment to appreciate what's around us with me. not by ourselves, but with me. By ourselves, it's important also. And that brings us down to self-speak, right?
Exactly.
As far as developmental steps go that make a difference in the course of perspective, action, how we identify ourselves, how we look or choose to interact with the people around us. You can say a mantra, a chant, in a way, that's self-speak. Sure beats being negative, right?
Sure does.
So how do we speak to ourselves? Do we allow ourselves to get drugged down into the toilet whenever something goes bad? Because in that measure, if everything is perfect, how will you know when something isn't? How do you appreciate gourmet food if all you ever eat is gourmet food?
And that brings up to another point, is that a lot of us have reflex. We think before we act before we think.
Yes, yeah, I get that. Reaction instead of action. There's a difference between the two. When I was growing up, it used to be a 10 count. Count to 10 before you do anything. In this case, this is one of the reasons that we develop mind and body and heart, will, connected to spirit, manifestation. Because once you throw that out there, it has power. You can't take it back. It's going to resonate out there. What you can control, what you can work with, is yourself and your choice for action instead of responding to everything or reaction.
Because
if you have to respond, it should be one of choice, not one of
reflex.
Vice or reflex, yes. Being set into action, being manipulated by yourself or other forces, i.e. the government. Because we can choose the direction we're going in. We can choose the direction we take. We can walk around in that sinkhole so that we're not part of the calamity. We're not throwing our head in the sand or ignoring the people around us. If we don't make these points of development as we move along, then these things that you're talking about as far as lack of compassion, that won't happen. That won't take place. We've been working this same motif for the last 10,000 years. If you look at the doomsday people, let me see, what was going to happen in the year 2000? All the computers were going to go, right?
Oh yeah. What was that?
Did it?
Y2K?
Yes. Did it happen? No, not at all.
Did we party like it was 1999? Of course we did.
Oh, of course they did. They party all the time. They just needed another reason. And inside of that growth that you're talking about that makes a difference is the idea that we have food that we put in our mouth. We have food that we put in our brain, our thoughts. So how we connect to things based on that is a tremendously large idea. or important function would be more important to say. If all you do is watch people being chopped up, how are you going to have better thoughts than that? At some point, you have to take time to step aside from the glamour of tech to get a mental enema and relieve yourself of those images that are constantly being thrown at you. Brainwashing is the more common term to use on that. Maybe not anymore, but they call it fair marketing now. But when you have things like that thrown at you constantly, where do you go with it? And when do you use the value of discernment when things are happening? Which is causing what? You can't blame everything on the government or those who control the government, because we are the people.
But the other thing is too is that the mind, whatever the mind says, thinks, does, or whatever, the body is always going to follow through. But without the conviction, we wouldn't have mind, body, and soul. It's the lack of conviction that is driving a lot of people up the wall. Because a lot of people are not standing their ground to what they perceive to be true. Instead of, it's like, we've coined the term in the last decade, sheeple. The individual, we lack the conviction to have an individual mind, to make the choices at free will. So right now, we're being taught to just follow whoever's leading and believe it to be true, without the discernment.
Well, you make a statement like that, and it's hard for me to not follow, but to make a statement on it without saying something that I'm going to end up sued for. So I'm going to be try and be a little more astute than I usually am in this. But we have a mind menagerie going on, and I really do. The term tech gets thrown out there too much. However, things are developed now so that they maintain your attention consistently. And you have to decide what you would like to maintain your attention on. The type of development that we're discussing to make change used to be seeded by evangelicals. However, we all saw where that went. People are people. And we have to accept that back in the old days, old religion, way back when, people of certain talents, and it wasn't actually that long ago when, we had the Dalai Lama, he's still here, but people of talent would be brought to temple, and similar people would be trained in those ways, and then you would go out into society. It was a lot smaller, and then come back to be refreshed. That's not different than 90% of the church talk that you hear. The reason of gathering is that you come to a place where studies have been given for a long period of time. It's like walking into a really old library. Mm-hmm. You can just feel the knowledge oozing. But you have to take advantage of that. You have to use that. You have to, learn it and practice it. And if it doesn't apply, or you feel like it doesn't apply, you don't throw it away. Eventually, it may have a purpose to you. The heresy of growing up is the difference between thinking that you know everything and eventually coming into contact with those things that you think you know and actually learning what they're about. In some cases, you have people that are born with these knowledges present. In other cases, you have to learn your math one step at a time.
And the majority of us spend a lifetime of doing that. And then finding that they've never reached to the point of destination in the first place. Without ever having to learn.
That's and cutting out the idea of past life regression. Mm-hmm. That's where meditation comes in, and that's where touching the heart of God and the heart of yourself at the same time. You have a connection there, and if we move beyond theory, then we know that sound carries forever, light carries forever. And this thing that we call energy doesn't get destroyed, it's just transformed, or maybe you'll be Jimmy Dean the next time around. Mm-hmm. And inside of that, then, is in the connection to deific force, is that hive mind principle that Jung was talking about, or many others. We're all connected. All connected. So even if you're just a newborn, you have access to an infinite amount of knowledge. The question is, can you still your mind long enough to be present with it? Because it's only in that where you're capable of accessing it. Then, of course, comes useful practice.
Well, with that said, Frederick, we're going to take a break, and I would love to talk about, after the break, the hero's journey. Call it what you will. It is part of it's depicted in a book, but as a mythological story, but it so can be applied to the stories the story actually expresses universal truths about the human experience, which is all about the evolution of the human experience and spirituality in itself, meaning that we are each a hero in our own journey. So with that said, Frederick, I would love to take a break. You are listening to Soma Fusion with your host, Katie Kamara, on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. For more information, please look me up on social media. Again, go to my website, soma-fusion.com or somafusionmedia.com, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share out this show, and let the whole world know what we're learning each week. And I invite them to listen with us. Again, when we come back from the break, we'll be talking all about the hero's journey and how it applies to us about this topic this evening.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true. no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true. I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true. I will rescue you. I hear the whisper underneath your breath. I hear you whisper you have nothing left. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true. I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true. I will rescue you. Oh, I will rescue you.
Waking up to a new sunrise, looking back from the other side. I can see now with open eyes, darkest water and deepest pain. I wouldn't trade it for anything, 'cause my brokenness brought me to you, and these wounds are a story you'll use. So I'm thankful for the scars, 'cause without them I wouldn't know your heart, and I know they'll always tell of who you are. So forever I am thankful for the scars. Now I'm standing in confidence, with the strength of your faithfulness. And I'm not who I was before. No, I don't have to fear anymore. So I'm thankful for the scars, 'cause without them I wouldn't know thankful for your scars, 'cause without them I wouldn't know your heart. And with my life I'll tell of who you are. So forever I am thankful. I'm thankful for the scars, 'cause without them I wouldn't know your heart. And I know they'll always tell of who you are. So forever I am thankful for the scars. So forever I am thankful for the scars.
And we are back. You are listening to Soma Fusion Radio with your host, Katie Kamara, with my guest tonight, Frederick Jensen. And we are talking all about the evolution of spirituality. And we are now going to be talking about the hero's journey and what it really means. From me, the hero's journey is basically me looking at the mirror. Parts of the points of the point of the hero's journey is that it reflects nearly universal human experiences. It does so in two major ways. Hero's journey is a reflection of the process of growing up. It's learning about the world, maturing, exploring new regions of experience, meeting fellow travelers, encountering new challenges, and developing the skills to overcome them. It is about flourishing and flowering in new ways, the journeys from juvenile to adult. And number two, even if we're no longer children, the hero's journey continues to be relevant. It is also about the obstacles that we experience in everyday life, the obstacles and crises that cause us disadvantage and pain. The hero's journey is the story of encountering desperate and difficult situations, grappling with fear and hesitation, seeking out mentors and allies, developing strategies and forging new psychological tools, and then expressing the drive and fortitude to weather adversity and come through as a better person, a hero, if you will. And I resonate that so much. I don't know about you, Frederick, in your journey. Do you resonate with that as well?
Hero, huh?
Yeah. Just a loose term.
I think at the end of the day, everybody has to be their own hero. They have to learn how to be their own heroes, to stand for themselves, to be their own rock. No branding involved there, by the way.
So do you have your with everything that I just said? Do you have your own analogy of what that journey may be in terms of the evolution of spirituality or the spirituality within ourselves?
I've always stayed away from the term hero with myself. I look at myself as being many things, but you do definitely have to be your own. You have to learn to be you, and at the end of the day, maybe that's what being a hero is about, is that they are strong enough to uphold and help others, yet uphold their own beliefs, to continue to grow, to learn from adversity and advance forward, to learn from adversity and be able to do nothing at all, because that's the thing to do. That's a very tough situation for most people, to learn to stand for themselves and for others by doing nothing when they want to do something the most. It's a lesson we learn with our children, I think, probably the most, is that we can teach them everything. But we have to release the reins so that they can take the tools and work things for themselves, work things out.
Well, what about those others that can't? That really have no way out of seeing, who they are, what they are all about, and finding their purpose.
That's really deep, because that can flow into so many different areas. If, as you put, our job here is to learn and to grow and to advance, and then if we take all the other things that we know of transformation, of responsibility to find joy, having compassion for those who are not, as we think, finding their way, sometimes it's all we can do. Part of heroism is understanding that when you can't fix people, you can help them see where to go, but you can't put their feet on the path themselves. That's the lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Mm-hmm.
And who are we to say at that moment that we're that person's teacher, or that we're that person's hero, or that at that moment the heroic thing isn't being stern enough or tough enough with ourselves or strong enough with ourselves to do that one important thing that leads to letting them having that experience on their own, so that they can find out whether they can do it or not. If we pick people up constantly, if they have the tools, then are we helping or are we harmful?
Well, it's all about taking the first step in your adventure.
It is. Absolutely. It's kind of funny having grandchildren and watching them. It reminds me of having, when mine were little, you can walk with them while they're walking, while they're learning to walk, but the better experiences for them are when they take those steps on their own, because they know that they can do it. And as much as I want to create a situation we can be there every moment, that doesn't help them, and it doesn't help us. Part of us becoming our hero is also knowing that being supportive for people is different than running or ruling their lives. Setting an example makes a better hero.
Because you're not really walking a path if you're not walking your walk and talking your talk with conviction.
That's true. Words have power. Actions tend to have more power. And conviction is shown by the steps that you take. and moving through your own life. You show yourself you can rise above. You can become something different, something else. Stretch out, reach out. Thomas Edison. How many times did he try different things before he found something that worked in the light bulb that would stay there long enough to prove that it could work? A mistake, what we call failure. If we learn from it and don't stop, we go on to the next thing and don't try to do the same thing over again. It's in the exact way. It's a learning experience. Not a failure. We learn as much from when we don't succeed at something as we do when we do succeed at something. We learn about our temperament.
But the same going is good things come to people who wait, but better things come to those who go out and get it.
Well, perseverance is definitely a key that sits inside of that. Good things come to those who wait. Quite often, the things that they get, they didn't actually wait for. In working on creating, we start with a vision, right? You clear space. We look at the things that we want to build, how we want to help somebody, and step by step, we put the blocks of that together. The difference between building a house on sand and building a house on solid ground.
That's
we
the
put
same.
Those building blocks. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's the same analogy as try not to become a person of success, but rather try to become a person of value. It's the same analogy that you were just about to say about building a house.
Absolutely. Build the vision properly, put the effort in, and many times by the time you get the reward, you put in a lot of hard work that nobody has ever seen. And quite honestly, people tend to forget themselves about the struggles that they went through to get where they were. Oh, that looks easy. Well, look at how much practice went into it. You have a classical violinist, spends their entire youth practicing. They can play what they play in the dark, with or without music. Looks easy to most people, and then they forget. That's what this person spent all their time doing. It's easy because they put the time in. They don't think about it because it's their love, it's their passion. And that's another thing. You have that will, you have that love, you have passion. You keep that going. You build an energy about it. You can call it a thought form. It builds an energy of itself because it seeks other things. You put yourself, you end up around people that of a similar attitude, of a similar mind, of a similar nature. And that helps keep your vision clean, pure, moving forward. It's like, I don't know about you, but when I was young, my grandfather used to say, Frederick, the friends you choose to have, people you choose to associate with, that's where your life is going to go. That will be what is built inside of your life. And he was right. Yokes, uneven yokes. I like mine over easy. But hanging around people of a similar yoke, of similar desire, of similar quality, of, I know that sounds prejudiced in and of itself, but if you're looking for an example of how to do something and you want to be a rock, that's just a piece of granite. Hang around granite. If you want to write books, hang around someone who understands good literature, or even poor literature, but how to find a good manager or publisher. When you involve yourself with people who are moving in the direction or are successful in the manner of not just what you want to project, but the edifice of what you want to be, or the edifice of what you're becoming, or the edifice of what you're building. You're working with people that are going to help build the base. That example builds and doesn't take away. However, there's still the magical proposition. All things in silence. If you don't have those people around and you have that goal, you go after those goals. That's not just the American dream, but the Olympic dream. Sounds rather heroic to me. And you build yourself. Until you are able to gather some people around you or make that success, it's best not to have people tear down a vision of what you are wanting to create before you're able to put it into play.
See, for me, it took only 33 years to figure that one out. Then I got myself in the right crowd.
Well,
but I mean, it also took me 33 years to recognize that the meaning of life is to find my gift, my purpose, my everything that makes me me, and then give it all away. And when I give my gift away, it's through this medium, doing exactly what I'm doing right now.
yes, consider that you are giving a resonance that builds upon itself. For every person that's out there that you affect, who, whether now or 100 years from now, puts that into play, that increases the volition of energy surrounding what builds your project. You don't have to see it. You just have to get a bunch of mustard seeds.
Mm-hmm.
It's the faith without action, right? Doesn't mean much, but faith with the action that means a lot. And even if the action is the idea that faith by itself is an action. If you don't believe in what you're doing, then where's the faith?
Exactly. And there's many people out there that have lost their faith because it's almost like they've given up through
Yes, well,
betrayal, abandonment, rejection.
yeah, absolutely. Let me see, what do we have? Who felt betrayed? Abraham, Jesus, Jonah, they all came back to faith. Jacob, they're all a testament of breaching faith and coming back to it in a stronger way. Moses shows us that we can block ourselves. We can be our own block. And those blocks are more difficult to remove. So being your own hero, it's an important thing. It takes belief, and it takes faith, and it takes work. No free rides on that train. But the outcome is the knowledge of what you are not just capable of, but able to present, and manifest.
It's almost to say knowledge is being aware of what you can do, and wisdom is knowing when not to do it.
Yes. I believe wisdom would come into that also.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. On the other hand, in order to be able to do anything, you have to be able to believe in it. It's back to you can help your child walk, but they don't know what they can do until you let go of their hands and they run towards you, or they just walk across the floor. At that point, that is a very gracious manifestation.
But it all takes effort.
Yes.
That's where a lot of people get stuck.
Effort can be translated into work over willpower.
Well, like I said, they've always said that courage is the resistance to fear, and mastery of fear, not the absence of fear.
Exactly. You do the thing, you get the courage. That builds. Faith, belief. The next time you do something, you have that instinct that says, huh, I was able to do that before. And you know why? You say, hey, I did that. Katie may have stood with me and helped me, but I did that.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that again. I can replicate that. Basic business model, actually, if you look at it that way. Have the right pattern, replicate the pattern until you can produce on your own, adapt it to yourself, tweak it, and make it yours. Refine it, but the keys there are that you are practicing it, that you are working with it. And while you are refining it, it's actually refining you too. And that broadcasts out into everybody that you meet. So at that point, your hero self doesn't have to do something on purpose, fully intentional of a committed action that's going to reference a change for others, but through their trial and tumult, they learn that they can change themselves and overcome and be prosperous in that way. And through that energy, it transforms those around them. Now that's leadership quality there.
Mm-hmm. And then when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid of carrying it out.
Well, yes. I think one of the nice things is that as you work with your vision, you don't, at a certain point, you stop thinking about the vision. You stop thinking about fear. You work with the action. You're working with faith and results. Doesn't mean that there won't be challenges, because there's always a challenge. But you will see the challenges as a way of growing for yourself and moving further along, honing your skills even more. And that really ties your spiritual evolution, or the evolution of your being, into your working heroism. Because the hero stops worrying about generating an action that's going to please others, or whether they can or can't do something. They know that failure is a possibility. Because that's not their concern, they're able to walk through that fire and go beyond.
And then, there is no chance, no destiny, no fate that can hinder or control the firm resolve of a determined soul. That courage, that faith, that passion.
That's true.
Well, the vision may be lost at some point, but the vision's always resurrected with other things. Visions have
you know what I like
innovation.
about division?
What's that?
In order to divide something, you have to have something to begin with. And sometimes we need to take stock in the fact that it wasn't that we didn't have something to begin with, it's that we didn't recognize what we had. And as we invest ourselves in what you were talking about, and we invest ourselves in the alchemical transformation of belief, nature, and vision ourselves, then the idea of loss or gain becomes less important. And at some time, it becomes neutral. Because we have that faith. Because we have built that character. Because we have gained that confidence. Because we did the legwork.
But I mean, like the old Margaret Thatcher said, you may have to fight a battle more than once to win whatever the hell you want to win.
No? Yes. Where Druid's saying is, without some sort of pressure, you don't polish. If there's not something there to challenge you, you become stagnant. The people that believe that they're making the most progress, or I'll just reduce that to myself, when I believe I'm making the most progress, it's because things are running swimmingly. However, as people that are on this planet, that's also when we need to be careful not to get desk ass, not to sit on our laurels and not keep that fuel going. Because the hero has that lesson too. Doesn't take more than once or twice, but the hero has that lesson in the beginning. It's a young people thing. You build the vision, you don't need to give it fuel. You need to pay attention to it. You did the groundwork, and the energy is moving, but it doesn't mean that you can go to another planet and expect your garden to be really great when you come back, unless you've left somebody there that's really good at tending the gardens. You still have to develop. You still have to continue to do the work.
Exactly. Well, with that said, Frederick, we are going to finish up the show, or just about to anyway. So, where can people find you and your book? Do plug your book.
Well, the book is on Amazon right now. It'll be being relocated pretty soon, but the book is on Amazon right now. If you want to get in contact with me, aafjhale@gmail.com. You can get me that way. You can find me on Facebook. Or I imagine that they can find me through my so illustrious hosts. You?
Oh yeah, you can find Frederick on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. I'm not sure when you and Odin are going to be doing a show together, but that will be airing on Monday evenings at 10 p.m. Eastern. So I'm sure you guys would figure out when that's going to be happening. But Frederick is a host on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. And if I could give you one thing you could say to humanity right now, Frederick, what would it be?
Breathe.
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 Do you know what?
It all starts with breathing.
I always ask these questions and I always get one-worded answers. That's hilarious. Oh dear. Anywho, well, I do thank you so much for being on my show, Frederick, this evening. It's been such a pleasure learning from you and letting the listeners learn from you as well, not just myself. I will always see you as my mentor, so someone to look up to. So I please take that from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you.
On the other hand,
I enjoy what we do.
yeah,
That's all.
absolutely. But for all those listeners out there who are listening, remember to go to my website, soma-fusion.com or somafusionmedia.com. You can look me up on social media. I do have a couple of pages up there. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, a few other, Twitter. You can find me everywhere. If you want to message me, you can email me at somafusionmedia@gmail.com. If you're interested in being a guest on my show, also email me as well. Go over to my YouTube channel where you can go see all the archives from all the previous shows that we have on Soma Fusion Radio each week. That is at Soma Fusion, Mind, Body, and Soul. You can find me over there. Also, don't forget we have a show on Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern. That's Goddesses and Devils with Amanda McManus and myself. But until then, I would love to leave you a quote. A man can be as great as he wants to be. If you believe in yourself and have the courage and the determination and the dedication, the competitive drive, and if you are willing to sacrifice the little things in life and pay the price for the things that are worthwhile, it can be done. And with that said, I bid you all a good evening and a lovely week ahead. Love you all. I see you. We'll see you next week. Wednesday, 9 p.m. I love you all. Good night.